Hey, thanks for tuning in on your favorite podcast listening app. You know, one of my favorites is Spreaker. Now, along with Apple, Google, and Spotify, and even iHeart, you can enjoy this podcast. And so glad you learn and engage with us right here on the Aftermarket's premier podcast. Hey, in keeping with my goal to keep our succession theme burning as we face the reality that many of you need to retire and sell your business, and many of you would like to become business owners. Carm Capriato here, the Aftermarket Podcast Guy, and in this episode, we reveal a transaction with two internal non-family successors. Bob Ward anchors this episode as he has helped orchestrate this transaction. I'm with business owner Steve LaFleur from Prescott Import Car Services and one of the internal co-buyers, Dave Mendez. Now, Dave has worked for Steve for 10 years. This very candid conversation, I believe, will help move your succession plans forward. Get all the key talking points from this episode at remarkableresults.biz/A190. Now, these key talking points will absolutely make for a great planning agenda for you. Hey, please remember the great support the podcast has from Shopware and Shop Marketing Pros. Look, regarding your shop management system, stop spending time chasing customers. Shopware's leading shop management system is helping shops just like yours generate more profit per ticket with less time on the phone. Break away from your legacy system and implement a completely contactless workflow today. Get started at getshopware.com/carm. Are you happy with your marketing efforts? Is your marketing company sharing the same vanilla social media posts for you that they do for every other shop? Well, that's not how Shop Marketing Pros does business. Now, they believe each shop is unique with its own story. Contact them today on the web at shopmarketingpros.com. This podcast is great inspiration for you to choose what you do with your business. It's never too early to start planning.
You know, the thing about the outside candidate, as I was saying, is the reason I didn't want to go that way is because not only are your employees important to you, but so are your customers. The outside person has no knowledge of your shop culture.
Hey, more in a minute. Now, if you want to be a stronger member of the podcast tribe, please subscribe to my email list. It's free, and you'll be the first to know of all new episodes, live shows, and get my weekly memo to you. Be part of the podcast tribe at remarkableresults.biz/insider, the Aftermarket's premier podcast right here, where we strive to help all ships rise. And if a person can have too much fun, then I am the guilty guy. Tune into Aftermarket Weekly live on Tuesdays at noon Eastern Time. Now, if you miss it live, and I realize you can't always be there, go to aftermarketweekly.com, watch all the archived episodes, and partake in the content we bring you that includes a shop tour each and every week. In this academy, I'm with coach and consultant Bob Ward from Wardden LLC and perpetualbusiness.co and business owner Steve LaFleur and internal buyer Dave Mendez, both from Prescott Import Car Services in Prescott, Arizona. Hey, there's so much to know and learn about selling and succeeding your business. Enjoy. Afternoon, everyone. Carm Capriato here, Town Hall Academy, episode 190, as we are going to talk today about succession, and we're talking about succession with an internal candidate. If you're a fan of the show, you know that we've been doing a lot of podcasts lately on succession. I have to thank Bob Ward from Perpetual Business that pulled this together. I was talking to Bob, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, and he goes, Carm, I have a couple of great guys that would love to come on and talk about this. And Bob Ward is from Wardden LLC, perpetualbusiness.co. Right, Bob? .co.
Exactly.
Coaching consultant, and apparently you pulled this deal together. Steve LaFleur, Prescott Import Car Services. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Carm.
Glad to have you here, and thank you so much. The reason we're a little late is Dave had some huge technical difficulties, and thank you, Steve, for carrying him over the line. Appreciate that.
We're a team. We're a team. That's all I can say.
Apparently, yes. We'll know that a whole lot better here near the end of the show. And Dave Mendez, Prescott Import Car Services, and basically co-buyer of the shop, right, David?
Correct, yes.
There's another person, Scott Golden, who is your co-buyer. He couldn't be here.
Yeah, he's pedaling a bicycle in Idaho.
More power to Scott. Well, look, as I mentioned, we've done a bunch of shows. Town Hall Academy 183, Bob was back here in the studio. We recorded a great episode, First Steps to Selling Your Business. Thank you for doing that with us, Bob. That's right about 7 weeks ago. And just 2 weeks ago, we did another family succession. So that's an internal candidate with a family member. Why have I been so hepped up on succession? Why? I don't know about you, but I think the pandemic gave us time to think about stuff. I think it gave us time to think about, mortality, or will the end ever happen, and what am I doing about my future? Which is why I have been on such a punch with this. I come from a family business. I get this. I bleed this. I understand it. And I am worried that and Bob, you have the answers to this. What's the percentage of small businesses that don't survive and they have to liquidate?
Well, a generation ago, only about 35% of small businesses continued beyond the current owner. In the most recent generation, only about 15% survived the departure of the current owner, whether it's death, disability, or more happily, they retire, they're ready to leave, but there is no buyer. So 85% just go away.
And the truth is, they'll either liquidate, they'll sell, or be sold, or maybe just close and never worry about the stuff inside.
Well, there are only two choices. Every business will be sold. It'll either be sold as a liquidation, or it's going to be sold to an inside or outside buyer. There are only two choices, but every business gets sold one way or the other.
How do we convince owners who started their business, some of them 20, 30 years ago, some of them tomorrow, that they need to start planning for the sale of their business on day one? How do we help them with that?
Carm, that is the question that remains on everybody's mind who is in the business of money management, just business coaching, consulting. It's something that is known to everybody. We are all going to leave this planet. All of us. We also are all going to stop working one day. The question on everybody's minds should be, at a young age, how am I going to retire? How will I ever stop working? It means I need to save some money. I need to have some assets that will help me through retirement. Same with business. That is an asset. How is that going to help me in my retirement? Well, you need to plan for it. It won't just happen when you get to age 70 and you've got a big savings in your retirement plan, or you got a buyer waiting to give you a check. I don't know how to get people to start early, Carm. I really don't.
At least what you do is you get up on your little soapbox often and you preach about that, don't you?
All the time.
And every once in a while, you hope someone listens.
Steve did.
I did.
And it becomes their constitution. Listen, I have a really, we can see the comments, and here's a Facebook user, did not have a chance to put his name in there. Great question. How can you start planning a succession if the owner doesn't know? And, I think to the point where we think that one day we're going to die in our business, and let them worry about it. Whoever the other people are that they have to worry about, family, which is a terrible burden to put on anyone. But no one thinks that they're ever going to stop doing what they're doing. It's going to go on forever. Steve, did that ever happen to you? I mean, you're in this great position, and was it Bob that just kind of kept nudging you one way? What's your earliest recollection of planning for exiting?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, my personal experience, and probably like a lot of other shop owners, too, that we work so hard at starting our business and getting it going and keeping it going. And then we're, if we're lucky, we're actually providing a living for ourselves and our family and so forth. So I've had my business about 35 years. And, about 15 years ago, I watched another shop owner sell his shop. And he sold it to somebody. He came in from California, had money, loved cars, but had no experience in auto repair or running an automotive repair business, dealing with customers and so forth. And after a couple of years, that business just kind of became a shell of itself. The customers were leaving, the employees were leaving. And I saw another instance where kind of the same thing happened. I said, I don't want that to happen. I worked too hard for this. My employees have worked too hard for what we have. And I'm kind of an inclusive owner. I've always given my employees the ability to make decisions and so forth, make, for themselves and so forth. I always include them in that. And I wanted them to somehow be able to run my business. And I had met another shop owner through a focus group, a 20 group, if you will, that I'd been in for some time. And he devised a system where he had a couple of shops and he had hired a couple guys to manage them and with the idea that they would be the future owners. But I would question him about how he did this and how he did that. And I could never really get clear answers and so forth. But that's kind of what I was leaning to. And then our state ASA association put on a big training conference in Phoenix a couple of years ago. I brought all the guys down and I signed up for Bob's succession class. All the lights went on. It was just like, that was exactly what I was looking for. It incorporated everything. He had a plan for everything. It was all laid out. And that's when I began.
David, it's so great to be able to have a buyer on the show. And the seller at the same time. It is. So thank you both for being here. When did you first have the idea of business ownership and how'd you consider attaining that goal?
Honestly, I didn't. When I came to work for Steve, I remember sitting down. I'm actually sitting at the desk right now where my first interview was 10 years ago. And I remember sitting across the desk and we were chatting and he had mentioned that somewhere down the line that he was thinking of, passing the business along. He just had that forethought. And I just, listened to it because interview. It didn't really kick in until about 5 years ago. And I remember Steve and I and his wife, Patty, and Scott all went to lunch at a restaurant here in town. And that was the first serious conversation that we had. So it sort of became a reality at that point. Really, it never was a real thought of mine until then. Since then, however, it has become a complete grasp for me. I've dove in with both feet, try to be involved in all aspects of the business. Now it's an evolving, situation that we have, and it's enjoyable, nerve-wracking, but enjoyable.
Maybe it's great that it's nerve-wracking because that means you're being careful, right? You're trying to get the assurances that you're making the right decisions and that you're learning a lot. But I love one of the things you said. It was 10 years ago at this desk that you had your first interview. And was that the first inkling that you got from Steve that one day he would like to retire?
Of course, yeah. He actually made that statement that there is ownership coming in the future.
We talk about this on the show, Bob. It could be you that may have brought this up over the years that we've talked. And I have to say, here's the proof to everyone who has listened to this show has heard coaches say the next time you interview someone at any level for any position in the company, ask them what their plans are and that you ever consider ownership of a business someday, and then sit on your hands and listen. Well, Steve, I got to ask you, what a bold, great question to ask. What did David say?
I think he just kind of tucked it in the back of his mind at the time. We're a small shop at the time, and I needed a service advisor, and I knew he was available, and he'd worked in another shop in town. So I was pitching him pretty hard to come work for us. And so I don't really specifically remember saying that, but I'm glad David remembered that, caused him to stick around. But that's kind of the beauty of it, is that when you give people the possibility of getting something more than just a weekly paycheck, certain people will stand up and raise their hand and say, I'm in on that. This is a great opportunity. This is someone that understands that it's more than just about a weekly paycheck, and he wants to include me in the business.
Hey, Carm here. Coming up, learn about an essential conversation for every staff member you have. Hey, Carm here. Are your competitors ranking higher than you in search? Is your marketing company using plain vanilla recycled content? And does your marketing look like every other shop's and you're not even sure it's working? Powerful, effective marketing is not cookie cutter. It should showcase all of the things that are unique about your business. Don't you think you deserve better results? It's time to make a change. Our good friends at Shop Marketing Pros are past shop owners and industry veterans. They get it. Their process is pretty simple. Listen, create, and do. They spend time getting to know you and create a unique marketing message and then do the heavy lifting for you so you can do what you do best. Run a shop and fix cars. Do yourself a favor. Give your shop the top-notch marketing it deserves. Schedule a call today on the web at shopmarketingpros.com. That's shopmarketingpros.com. Don't wait. Do it now. Hey, you know, auto repair is a high-dollar, high-value transaction, and your customer sensitivity about how much it costs and why is never more important than when you ask them to pay the bill. While these conversations can sometimes feel awkward or uncomfortable, it's important that you don't fall down and cheapen your services at the final step. Shopware's shop management platform now offers a solution that helps you showcase the value and sophistication that you've invested throughout the repair. With our innovative digital workflow, customers can review, approve, and even pay for services right from their smartphone. Let remote pay work for you and improve your customer experience. Get started today. Visit getshopware.com for more information and to request a demo. So, Steve, do you remember you saying that to David? And then, as he was mentioning, in 5 years, take me, both of you, to that moment where there was serious discussion. Bob, chime in any time, Bob, because
Well, I'll let them start, and then I'll follow.
Yeah, again, I came back from taking that class with Bob. I said, this is it.
What year
this is what we need to do.
What year?
I want to say that was July of 2017.
That sounds right.
And we'd all gone down. Technicians were taking technical classes. Dave was in service advising class or something. And anyway, so then we got everyone together, and I said, look, I want to embark on this. I think this is can be a sound program to give you guys ownership if you're interested. That's a big step, and it's also a big thing to think about. But the way Bob works it, there's 4 basic steps to begin with that you have to go through. You have to discover what the business is about. What is the business, and is it making money? What's its value, and so forth. There's a whole bunch of steps that go through. So I kind of explained that to them. They were ready to go.
David, your recollection?
Pretty much the same thing. The lunch that I was talking about, it happened previous to Steve meeting Bob. Just kind of an impromptu kind of, let's get together and talk about things. And then it got real serious after Steve went to the session with Bob. Been pretty seamless at this point. Bob makes it very easy. He's always at the ready to talk if we need to talk to him. So I mentioned it was nerve-wracking, and it is, but he helps to calm those nerves and be a little more... helps us be a little more intuitive of what's going on from the day-to-day deal. Steve's a great person. I couldn't ask for a better person to be involved with in this, as well as Scott, actually. Yeah, so I'm very fortunate.
Let me tie this together, Carm, and help answer some of the listeners' questions about how do I begin? I have no clue the pieces and processes. I just know that I'm going to leave one day. There's always a place to start, and the starting place is the realization that I will be leaving, and ask the question, what will be the fate of my business if I don't come back tomorrow? Tragedy strikes, or I just decide I'm done, I'm leaving, I'm moving to the Bahamas. What will happen to my business? Knowing the answer to that, which generally is, it'll go away, it'll be done, it'll be finished within a month or months, it'll just be gone. The realization should be that call to action. I need to now plan today first for just basic continuity in the event of tragedy. Who's going to write checks? Who's going to make decisions? How is my family and employees going to be stable while things get figured out? That's a basic business continuity plan. In the bigger picture, it's what Steve, Dave, and Scott went through. Steve realized, I need to plan now. He started thinking about it 10 years ago, and he started getting information and doing his own research and due diligence. And he did go to one of my presentations, and I laid out that it is a relatively easy task. There's nothing super complex about it. It's just a matter of taking it one step at a time. What do we have to work with? What's it worth? How do we finance it? Put the legal details together. Those are the 4 steps. And it's a process. And Steve realized that the odds of selling it to a cash buyer outside the company are almost non-existent. And further, as he mentioned, he values his people. And the people are the company. It's not the stuff inside the building. It's the people. And Steve made a conscious decision. 1, I'm going to plan. And 2, I'm going to give the people who made my business and made it profitable and stood by me through good and bad, I'm going to provide an opportunity if they want to do it. And the key to who wants to do it and who's going to get that opportunity should be based on their passion, their commitment. You can solve for anything: money, timing, education. You can solve for all of those things. You can't make somebody be passionate and driven and committed. And Steve had Scott, master technician, who I believe has been there a little longer than Dave, and Dave's a service advisor. So we've got a great technician on production, great service advisor. They get along. They're passionate about being the owner. Everything else we can work with. And Steve just grasped that and gave them all the tools: education, authority, responsibility, coaching, mentoring, all the tools to have them grow. And when Steve said the process began in 2017, when the light bulb went on that I had a process, it took, and Steve, you can jump in just a moment, I think the process itself, from Steve saying, I want to begin, to having a signed, sealed, and delivered agreement, was 18 months. And it took effect. The actual agreement took effect in January of 2019. So we're in year 2 of a process. Am I right, Steve?
Yes, that's correct. Yep. It does take a little time. You know, like you said, the biggest challenge in doing this, even though it's laid out nicely, discovery, valuation, financing, and details, psychologically, we all have to adjust to the reality, you know, of from going from being a technician every day to being an owner. And what do you think about? What do you do? And you know, as from a service advisor, like, oh, now it's not just the customer and the technicians, it's other things to think about. So it can be a little daunting, you know, and it takes a little while to work through. But, you know, again, time, that's why it takes a little time. And that's why there's a solid process behind it to back it up.
I often use the analogy of getting married. A business partnership, buy-sell agreement, is analogous to a commitment to get married. And you don't just decide on meeting, you know, one day we're getting married today. Some do that, but that's pretty uncommon. There's this dating process. There's this discovery process. And the ultimate goal is for everybody to feel comfortable, confident, and that drives the commitment to get married, figuratively, or sign that agreement. We're doing this because we know it's the right thing to do. We did our homework.
I'm sitting here really wowed by this great discussion, and with, I think, so much great motivation. The biggest thing that I'm taking from this is the passion of the people. You said, David, a few moments ago, it was nerve-wracking. And can you help me understand, was it the gutsy decision that you knew you had to make? Was it family? Was it wife? What was the nerve-wracking part, if you care to share?
It was just the thought of being an owner, because for me, being a service advisor, I feel responsible for the entire business anyway, from top to bottom. I mean, I feel responsible for Steve and his family, the technicians and their family. So it was just the thought of having my title change from service advisor to owner, which I've since come to grips with. It's just was kind of a awe feeling. Was it part of a risk that you knew you were taking? Not really for us, because of the way Bob has set this up. That part of it is like I said, seamless. It's very easy to comprehend and deal with. It's just now feeling more responsible, I guess, for the business and the people that are inside the building with us.
Hey, David, Explain a little bit to the audience how you and Scott communicated with each other as you worked through the process, how you considered sharing responsibilities, how you would work together, any challenges that you had, and maybe even touch a little bit on how the wives interacted between you and Scott as you're dating each other with Steve in that metaphor of a family.
Right.
Just explain the personal dynamics a little bit.
For myself, and I hope Scott feels the same way, I'm the most fortunate person to have Scott as a future business partner. He just is so balanced, very thought-provoking. He doesn't do anything on the fly, where I am the antithesis of that. I am fiery and brazen. We meld together pretty well. We bounce off together pretty well. He's very numbers-oriented, as am I, so we get along in that aspect. We put pen to paper and we see things in black and white, and it makes it easy for us to deal with it. As far as the wives, they were on board from the go. I could speak for my wife, Rissa, and I think for Robin, Scott's wife, that they're very excited about what the future holds for us. They're completely on board, completely supportive. It's just been a kind of a seamless transition. Scott and I were friends, best of friends, before we're anything else. So I think that made it a lot easier.
Bob, how many do you see inside of these succession plans that two candidates are chosen?
It's running in my practice, and I work nationally and now in Canada too. It's about 1 in 5, 1 in 4, roughly. And blessedly, they are relationships that are like Dave and Scott. People will not go through this. I mean, they won't even start if there isn't a basic level of comfort and confidence. And then you do step 1, and do we still have comfort and confidence, or maybe even more so? Because things will only continue, sort of, again, back to dating. You only keep dating and getting more serious and closer to marriage if it feels right. If it doesn't feel right, it stops. So I've never done more than 2 buyers, but I was going to say, blessedly, they've all worked, and they've all been relationships like Dave and Scott, where they've been working together for a number of years. They like each other, respect each other, and they're mutually committed.
Thank you for that. Steve, when you stopped and saw Bob's presentation, you probably immediately thought of Dave and Scott, and it was almost like, boom, the lights went on. Bob gave you the lights, and then you looked internally and you found 2 incredible candidates. Can you give us advice to a shop owner who's about ready to have his lights go off and realize he needs to do something like this? How would he start filtering through the people that he has and think about them? Is it your thoughts, then your approach? How do you start to have that dialogue?
It begins with how you think of your employees, I think. You have to think of them as partners in a sense. You work with them every day. I mean, you're with them more than you're with your family.
If that's the case, I'm brand new to this, and I'm listening to the show, and I realize, okay, I have to start thinking about my people. Do I go in observation mode? Do I go in question mode? What kind of mode do I go into to see if there's an internal candidate that will work?
Some of it, I think, it has to be driven by the need for you to find an exit from your business. Okay, when you start to do that, you start to look at people differently. I think you're going to look at your employees differently that way and go, okay, can Sam here is really good in the shop, or Pete's really good at the counter with customers and so forth. Do any of them have as Bob said, the passion and the aptitude to do this? And I think that's what you look for. And that's also what you should look for when you hire as well. That's key.
It's what I call the essential conversation. Super, super simple, but it should be done with every applicant and then all the people currently on your staff. The essential conversation is, I am planning, or always planning, for the continuity of my business. And to do that, my people are the company. And so having the right people in the right place, the right time, that's most important to me. So here's what you want to convey. What is most important to you, David, Scott, applicant, whoever it is? What's most important to your career? Where do you see your future ultimately? It's an open-ended question. So think of a brand new applicant, or you're just going to take stock of who you have. You just ask that really simple question. What's most important to you in your career? And where do you want it to be ultimately? And then you just listen. That will tell you what's on their mind. And they may come out and say, ownership is really important to me, where they wouldn't just come up and tell you if you didn't ask the open-ended question. And if they don't say ownership is important to me in that one question, that's the only follow-up you need at that moment on that topic. Have you ever considered ownership in your future? And then you say, great, thank you for the information. That's really useful. I'm going to take that under advisement and consideration, and we'll talk more in the future. There's no risk to that conversation, everything to gain to know where your people want to be. And now that's the very first step for that consideration Steve was talking about.
I'm going to ask a very facetious question here to you, Bob. Was Steve lucky?
I think Steve and other owners earn the people they have and their success. I think hard work and focus and perseverance translates to what other people would call luck. The people watching this show and the owners I work with, they built this themselves. Nobody handed it to them. They didn't start out with $250,000 in the bank. They earned what they have. And that is why I believe they deserve to be able to exit successfully, get paid for their life's work, and have that legacy maintained. So we could say Steve was lucky because he's got a pair of amazing partners. But he has those partners because of who Steve is.
It's the answer I expected. It's an answer that I wanted my audience to hear, okay? That you make your own luck. To the other shop owners that are out there, I get this thing. Okay, I'm looking around. I'm doing first blush here, and I don't see anyone or anything. I may know the answer to this question, but where do I go from here?
It sounds like you need to find some more people or new people, perhaps.
Yeah, but wait a minute, Steve. I'm 60, and I don't know if I have time. And oh my God, what do I do? Can I actually sell this to an outside candidate? Is that an option? Obviously, it's an option, right?
Yeah, it's an option. The thing about the outside candidate, as I was saying, is the reason I didn't want to go that way is because not only are your employees important to you, but so are your customers. The outside person has no knowledge of your shop culture, how you relate to your customers, how you relate to your employees and so forth. That means nothing to them. You're just numbers. And that's very valuable in a small business. And so I can't stress enough to owners that is the key in a small business is small stuff, employees, customers, personal relationships.
I love his answer, Bob. Steve is saying, I'm selfish. I don't want my people to change or get hurt. I want my clients to be as happy as possible. I've built all this and I don't want it to go away.
Right. But it requires that planning. And the earlier you do the planning, the more success you're going to have in getting it done right. I want to add one little piece that maybe didn't get answered there. If you don't have nobody says, I want to be an owner, or you realize nobody has the aptitude or they don't have the drive, well, then you do need to go find somebody.
Yeah.
And if your ad contains the sentence, ownership potential, just has to have that possibility of ownership. You could be advertising for a technician, a service advisor, a manager, a controller, any position. And if in the ad it says possibility of ownership, that's absolutely 100% true. You're going to be selling the business one day. Someone else is going to be the owner. If the ad says this, you may attract a candidate that you would never attract if you just said, I want a general manager, a technician, or a service advisor. They already have great jobs. but maybe they don't have the possibility of ownership. So that should always be discussed. And then to Steve's point, you just don't want to bring somebody from the outside and 3 months later start on a sale process, but you would bring them in to fill a needed position with the discussion up front that there is an ownership possibility provided everything else is working out. And maybe that serious discussion wouldn't begin for a year or two after that person has proven themselves. But the owners need to know you must start planning if you're going to successfully exit your business and be one of the 15% that it works and not the 85% that just shuts it down.
The pandemic, I think, has really brought every proven base case of the advice that our coaches in our industry and owners in our industry have been preaching over and over again, right? You've got to have cloud-based. You got to have a DVI. You've got to have great culture. I mean, go down the list of how, if all of that was in place, how the businesses has survived during this 7 month, pandemic, and all the different states and all the different requirements that are going on. And I look at succession, having been in this. Hello, it may be too late. It's like, you kept pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off. And we know what the average age of our owners and our technicians are in this industry. And I think we're coming upon a very interesting crisis of what do we do now for the shop owners that have 1, 2, 3 places. I mean, they're just saying, whoa, this is great. I'm going to go out and get some locations or buy some businesses, and some at rock bottom prices, because there's been nothing done internally to shore up great businesses so that they can succeed and bring value. This dialogue continues to prove the importance of all of this.
Dave, talk to the audience a little bit about how this staff reacted to the knowledge that you and Scott were going to be the future owners. How did they react? Did some of the people say, I'm not going to work for them, I can only work for Steve? What was it like when the knowledge was public?
Nothing like that. This crew that Steve has put together here has been together, the newest guy is 2 years, but for the most part, the core people have been here in double-digit years, of which I'm the youngest of 10 years. We've kind of grown up together, so to speak. And Steve's cultivated a family-style business, so everybody gets along. I mean, we get in arguments and like brothers would. But for the most part, everybody was encouraged and happy. They know that somewhere down the line, there's a possibility that they'll be the next in line. So that's something to look forward to. They're all quite a bit younger than Scott and I. It's exciting for them as well. Never a sense of animosity or jealousy or anything of the sort. Everybody jumped in with both feet. I'm sure we're all going to be sad when Steve goes. I'm hoping it's a pretty seamless transition because of the length of time that we've all been together. That's just the way it should be.
David, I want to stick with you right now. The most important question that I think Bob Ward has probably asked you in the past, but if you're willing to share, when will you start planning your succession?
It was funny. I was thinking of that as Bob was talking, and I'm thinking to myself, we probably have, I'm not sure how much time we have left before we are in the position to start doing that. But for Scott and I, and it's really due to our age, for Scott and I, it'll be immediately. As soon as we're able, we'll start the transition.
Very, very interesting comment. And Steve, you don't have to share this if you don't want, but this transaction is working. You guys are all partners, and there will be a point in time when Dave and Scott will be majority. Is that right? Is that how that will work?
Yes, correct. Mm-hmm. Fully take over management from that point on.
What are you going to do after that? Hang out?
Well, I've been working on that. As it is now, I come in and spend about maybe 4 hours a day at the shop. With the pandemic and so forth, I spend the mornings exercising or getting out on my bicycle out in the forest or, playing some tennis with some friends or something. So easing into it.
So you're giving the guys room to grow.
Yes, absolutely. I'm trying to stay out of their way as much as possible, but still, kind of keep an eye on things, a little monitoring and some mentoring. So
Steve has been really good about giving us free rein to make decisions regarding the business for the most part. I mean, we always consult him, obviously. He's given Scott and I the ability to make business decisions on the fly as we need to, which is really preparing us to become owners.
And I can't imagine with Bob Ward's, you have to build and run a perpetual business. Bob and Steve, were you a believer of that before you met Bob, or did Bob's teachings and eventually you hired him to help you with this transaction? What can you tell the rest of the audience about that?
Well, I was aware certainly that there's a lot of employee-owned businesses out there, in general, if you want to call it that, and so this is just a way of doing that. Not so that every employee is an owner per se, but every employee has the ability to become an owner if they so wish. It's an important thing going forward for any business. Again, like Bob says, the thought that you hire somebody with the possibility that they could someday own the business is a powerful tool, especially in today's tough marketing world where it's really hard to find good quality help. That's a big incentive.
Hey, look, I want to put a bow on this thing, and I want to go around the room. Bob, just so that everyone can get in touch with you, I put the .co at the end of that name there. You see that? perpetualbusiness.co. Bob, be more than happy to, I'm sure, chat with you and help you figure out what your succession will be. This was great. We've done a whole bunch of shows now recently on this. I so thank David for coming on, as an internal candidate. Deal done, right, David? You're just working out the details. You're building equity, making profits, right?
Just dotting the I's and crossing the T's at this point, I guess, huh?
Good for you. Any final words? Give me some advice to the people that are listening that could be in your shoes one day.
If you get the chance, take the chance. It's worth it. Do all your research. Talk to Bob. Use him as a resource tool. But jump in and do it. It's very exciting. Like I said, a little nerve-wracking, but looking forward to the future very much.
And then ask the owner that you're working for, hey, let's go to lunch. Have you ever thought, what are your plans? Do you consider me? And I mean, somewhere along the line, the ice has to be broken.
That's right. I mean, it's up to you. If that's what you're striving for, go get it.
From your perspective, Steve, a final discussion to the owners that are out there, but I guess the owners out there have to present that they're open enough to be able to have their people come to them with this thought.
As Bob said, probably not everyone realizes that someday their business is going to get sold, as a fire sale or as, something that can work for their retirement. For the most part, I can't stress enough that they need to start this as soon as possible because it is a management tool that's valuable in even building their business so that it is a valuable commodity to sell to their employees going forward.
Any final words to a hesitant shop owner who, I know their first step, contact Bob at perpetualbusiness.co. That would be their first step. But wouldn't you think that it's the wife, it's the rest of the family? I mean, don't you think that there's, some almost non-business discussion that has to happen? Can I and should I retire? And do I want to slow down and all that stuff?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that your family is going to understand that, yes, you are going to want to retire someday. But the other thing I'll say is it doesn't happen overnight. So it's something you need to start on right away. It's a conversation. Just because you start talking about it now doesn't mean you have to do it right now, but you can start working toward it.
Great advice, Steve. Thank you so much. I'm going to have you wrap this thing up for us, Bob, and thanks for bringing the team here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love what I do because my clients are like Steve and David. You're working with the best people in our country that make things happen, and seeing that continuity of a great business, that's incredibly rewarding. Now, let me give this last piece of advice that dovetails with something Steve said about people and the possibility of ownership, how that makes the opportunity available. Once again, the people are the business. Anybody can go buy a lift and some parts inventory anytime they want. That doesn't make you any money. The people make the money. They make the business, which means the people are your most important asset, but you must do something about that knowledge. I have a philosophy that business owners want to have, and I'm going to say they must have, an ownership culture in their entire company and build their company around the people as if all the people, everybody, was an owner in practice, if not actual fact. so that everybody is treated as a partner with knowledge of where the business is going, the tools to get there, the information to know if we're making the progress, so that the whole company is being built as a partnership. There will ultimately be owners, in fact, like Scott and David. They're the new owners. But if everybody else feels valued like a partner, you've really got something of value while you are owning your business. You're making more money, your turnover has gone down, and you're developing your future owners today. So I want to close with my favorite quote from Harvey Firestone. It is the growth and development of people that is the highest calling of leadership.
Every time I hear that, Bob, it's a warm feeling. Thank you for saying that again here on our show. Bob Wardden, President, Wardden LLC, and perpetualbusiness.co. Steve LaFleur, the seller from Prescott Import Car Service, and David Mendez, co-buyer at Prescott. Thank you, guys. I know Scott Golden isn't here, but he's a key player in this transaction, but he couldn't be here. He's out riding a bike somewhere. This was a great, great help to everyone in our industry. Thank you very much for sharing, and have a great, great weekend, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. As well.
Thanks, Carm. Our pleasure.
Thanks for being on board to listen and learn from the premier automotive aftermarket podcast. Until next time.